Within 24 hours, I was completely paralyzed and mute. So I was basically locked in my body. The way they had to communicate with me was blink once for yes and twice for no. And one night I woke up and I couldn't breathe. To me, everything just went black. I thought I died, and I was actually happy.
I can't even imagine what I would do if my daughter had a stroke at 25. But that's what happened to this lady. And then I don't know what I would do if the recovery took 10 years and it wasn't a full recovery. I don't know if I would have been able to stop fighting or trying to get, but what do I do if my daughter is exhausted and is ready to move on? And all of this, I'm just, Maria, can you just help us understand what it was like for you and your family at 25 years old? You had a stroke.
It was really unexpected, first of all, because nobody in my family ever had a stroke. I didn't even know what a stroke was. I'm at the hospital thinking I have food poisoning, right? And eventually they get to me and tell me, "Oh, miss, we think you're having a stroke." And I'm like, okay, so much for food poisoning, but what's a stroke? But I couldn't talk at that point, so I just wondered to myself, what's a stroke? I don't even know what that is. And it was pretty intense because within 24 hours, I was completely paralyzed and mute. So I was basically locked in my body. Doctors didn't even realize I was there. They thought I was comatose. Meanwhile, I could hear everything that's going on around me. And it was intense. Those first 2 weeks before they realized I was even conscious were hell. I can't describe it with any other word other than to say it was hell. Eventually, when they realized I was conscious, and I started to get some movement, but the movement I did get was very slow. So I began moving an index finger about 1 centimeter. That was my first movement. And when they realized I was conscious, the way they had to communicate with me was blink once for yes and twice for no. And that was my first, really, that I was able to express myself.
I'm so confused because they figured it out because you were moving your finger?
No, they figured it out because a friend of mine came to visit, and she was showing me pictures of a trip we took together, and she realized by the movement in my eyes that I was understanding what I was looking at.
I'm so, first of all, I'm in shock because you would think that they would have some kind of test to be able to verify if the person is comatose or the person is like conscious. So I'm even shocked to know that there's not a test.
Maybe there's now, that was in 2005, if there wasn't any then.
Wow. Okay. That's only like 19 years ago, right? So that's not that far back. I'm shocked. So your friend comes. She realizes she's tracking what she's I can see her eyes, and that's the beginning of what? How do they treat you differently, I guess? I'm not even sure.
I wouldn't say they treated it differently at first, especially because when she went to the medical staff and told them, "Hey, listen, I think Maria is understanding. She's conscious." What they said to her was, "Oh, no, 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 those are just involuntary eye movements."
Okay. So you were still stuck, basically.
Yeah, but I think they began to pay more attention. And then that's when my family said, "Okay, if you're understanding, blink once for yes, twice for no." Or to see if I could understand.
So the communication starts because your friend tells your family, and then your family pushes, and they figure out a way to get you to show it.
My friend told the doctors, and they said no, it's involuntary. But then my family, they're like, is she there? Is she even there?
Are you saying that they separately figured it out?
I believe they did, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I that's what really now I'm annoyed because your friends said something to the doctors, but they didn't relay it back to your family that your friend thought that. One of the things that we do know is that people react to people they know. I don't know why they wouldn't have said, "Hey, let's check out if she reacts to her own family so we could see something." They didn't even verify. This is frustrating.
No. Imagine how I felt.
I can only imagine. The part that's kind of, I'm stuck here, but I feel like the part that's kind of hitting me is when your friend saw what she thought, well, what she did see. It's not that she thought, she actually saw it. When your friend saw it, I'm sure that your eyes figured out, because you could hear her, that she figured out that you were in there. And then for I don't know if you heard the conversation between her and the doctor or the nurse or the whoever, but for nothing to happen for a week. Oh
You
my
know, it's
goodness.
fun. It's funny that you mentioned that because I actually did not find out that she spoke with the doctors until maybe a couple of years ago. I didn't even know.
Oh
She
my
told me
goodness.
recently. Yeah.
Okay. Oh my goodness. I don't want to derail the story. So help me understand what happens next.
Really long hospitalization. First hospital, 43 days. I wasn't getting any rehab at all. I was just lying on a bed, looking at four walls, staring at the same ceiling, day in, day out. Um, I eventually got trach because at first for a month I had a breathing tube that was in my mouth, and I would literally cry when I would see the nurse coming in with supplies for cleaning every day because it hurt so much. And then after a month, they decided, well, let's give her a shake. And that's because one night I was taken out from the ICU and I was put in a regular stroke unit. And for some reason, my mom was there. So, a couple of things about that. My family created shifts so somebody would be with me 24 hours a day. That was my parents and my brother, which is, it's so touching to see that people like show up for you like that. So anyway, my mom had the night shift. And one night I woke up and I couldn't breathe. And my mom called for help and they took me down. All to me, everything just went black. I realized I couldn't breathe and then I thought I died. I thought I died. And I was actually happy. I was wishing I died, right?
Wow.
But, you know, then I woke up and I had a trach and a feeding tube as well.
So somehow the tube got blocked.
The tube in my, no, I was in the ICU and they removed the tube and put me in a regular stroke room because they thought I could breathe on my own.
Oh, they thought you could breathe on you.
I'm sorry, I didn't make that clear. They thought I could breathe on my own. And then one night, I couldn't breathe.
Whoa. Okay. So was that when things changed, or did it keep going forward like that?
They gave me a tracheotomy, so the tube was not inserted in my mouth anymore. I had a trach. And at that first hospital, I never really got therapy, but my brother would be with me every day and he would move my arms, my legs, every which way. And I believe that that's the reason, or a big part of the reason why I have motion today, that I was able to recover the way I did.
I'm so confused about that first 43 days. Like, what was the, it sounds like there was no plan.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the plan was. All I know is that I ended up getting MRSA, which is a super bug that's in hospitals. I got MRSA. People had to wear gowns to go in my room. I was like an alien.
So the number of different medical problems that start compiling on top of each other because your body's just laying there. I guess all the germs that float around can just land on you and just this sounds like a horror movie.
It was worse.
Yeah, but it really happened. I mean, that is worse. When do things change? Like, how far along do you start to get something back?
So it was during the first hospitalization that my brother decided to bring me my laptop. And this was at a point where I had already began moving one arm, so my right arm had motion. And I began typing out what I wanted to say. And that was such a relief for me. Such a relief because finally I could communicate properly. And I went through spelling things out with my finger. Somebody would go through the alphabet and I would stop on the letter. That's how I communicated first after blinking. So the computer was a huge, huge relief. And then after 43 days, they put me in a rehab hospital. And I was so glad because I thought, oh, yes, I'm just going to get all patched up and this will all be a bad dream. Because I didn't know what a stroke was. I didn't know that I was supposed to be paralyzed. I didn't know that I was supposed to not heal completely. And so I go to the rehab center and they do an intake the following morning. I'm in rehab. So they're doing 3 hours a day, which I was glad for. And the therapist, she hands me a hairbrush, and she says, comb your hair. So I go comb my hair. I was like, oh, this is easy. And I was happy. So I go comb my hair, and I realized I couldn't get the brush past this. I couldn't even touch the brush to my head. And I started bawling because I realized, wow, the mountain that lay ahead.
That means that the first 43 days in the hospital, you did get motion back in your arm. Okay. And then we get to rehab. And this is where we start realizing that motion and better are very, very, very far apart. Oh my goodness. Okay. So how long does it take to be able to brush my hair?
I'm not sure what time frame it took. However, I do know that after 2 months in that rehab hospital, I finally went home.
Oh,
And I went home because insurance ran out. That's why I went home.
oh,
But
okay.
I went home in a wheelchair, right? And that's when the wheelchair didn't fit through any of my doorways. And I'm like, oh. So I graduated to using a walker. Barely. I couldn't even use one just because of necessity.
Wait, so you're saying that you ended up graduating to a walker, which might not have been physically safe for you because the wheelchair was too big? It's scary to me how not taken care of it sounds like you were. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm not talking about your family. I'm talking about the system that you guys
yes.
are in, that they couldn't figure out to get you a skinnier wheelchair.
I think that was the smallest wheelchair that was available. And gosh, my family really did take care of me. The doctors definitely dropped the ball, right? But my family was there every step of the way. Every step.
I love that bro got your arm moving. I mean, I'm sure that that challenge of the wheelchair not working just pushed them harder to get you walking, but it's frustrating that the hospital didn't pick up on this and move faster to help you. What could we have done in the 2 months before your insurance ran out had they picked up the ball? So it's a hard one for me to. put my mind around. But you're home. You're using the walker. Okay. What happens? What's the next thing that we figure out?
I had therapy at home for a while because they were waiting for me to be potty trained. Isn't that awful? I was 25 wearing diapers and I couldn't go to physical therapy because I had to be potty trained.
Okay, so basically now I have to learn how to control my bladder and bowels again, but I'm not getting the assistance to learn how to do that from the professionals because, right? So, like, if I'm getting some kind of physical therapy, they probably could have talked me through, walked me through what exercises to do, but I'm not getting that. And well, not in the right places because I can't do the thing that you should be teaching me how to. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, I don't even know how that works, and they would help you with the potty training. I don't know. I just know that they would only give me therapy at home until I was no longer wearing diapers.
Okay. So how many months, weeks? I'm not sure. How long did it take for that to be accomplished?
I would say months. I don't know exactly how many, but I would say months. Then I eventually did go to outpatient therapy, and they got me moving around pretty well. But a lot of it was me because, and my family, of course. I went to the gym when I eventually could walk, even if it was only I could walk without a walker, and that's when I began going to the gym to just do what I could. And my family, before that happened, my brother would come by every day. He would work out with me. My mother, when I first got home, we have a recumbent bike, the ones where you sit like a chair. So she says, "Okay, come ride the bike." I go ride the bike. I sit. I put my feet on the pedals. My feet slipped right off. I couldn't even keep my feet on the pedals. My mother tied my feet to the pedals.
We do what we got to do, right? I feel like they all could see. Well, first of all, the tenacity in you that this is happening. There was no thought that is not happening, and your brother and your mother and your father made it happen with you. It's like she wants it to happen, we make it happen.
They wanted it to happen because I had given up. I had given up literally. They were holding on to hope when I had no.
Now, that's what family's for, right? To keep us going when we can't. I just want to make sure I understand the time frame. So, like you're from the time that I have the stroke until I'm walking around and I'm working out. Do we have an idea of how long this is?
Probably 3 years,
3
2 years,
years.
3 years.
Like what's running through my mind right now is I can see you're standing, right?
Hmm.
It's like my brain is just like, wow. So 3 years to start walking around, and like I'm sitting in a chair, and you're doing this interview standing. So I feel like it's amazing to me what you've accomplished, but we're not done. Like, we're just at the part where you start working out. So how does that progress?
That was nice because when I joined the gym, they were having yoga classes, and I thought to myself, you know what, yoga is pretty easy, and the poses can be modified, so I think I can do this. Never did I think what was going to happen happened. The black cloud over my head disappeared. It was such a good mental exercise. I no longer was as depressed. So that was the first silver lining, if you want to say.
So something about the positions and the calmness and the people around me, all the right mix of things comes together and you feel connected again to who you are. It's amazing. I know that there's something to feeling your body and using your body in different ways, maybe interesting new ways. That's really, really cool. That, like, to see it play out. And it sounds like it was within weeks, maybe?
I think it was within weeks.
Within weeks. Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all of a sudden I started seeing things differently. I started to catch a little of that hope that my family had.
So I started yoga because I thought it would be easy. And it ends, and yoga isn't easy because I've tried it before. It's not that easy. But you started it because you thought it would be easy, and it ends up giving you even more than you thought you could have imagined.
I was so glad for it.
So we progress even more because now we have a good, positive, happy feeling about us. Maybe not, we're not probably all the way there, but it's really starting to come back. And then what happens?
Forgive me if I don't get the time
Yeah.
correct, but I did all kinds of things to get better. And it was my family that had that desire for me to get better. And frankly, I began to have it as well because I figured, you know what? I'm 25 years old. If I have to live another 40, 50, or even more years, I can't live like this. I cannot. So I did all kinds of therapy. I did chelation therapy, which is when the heavy metals are flushed out of your body using an IV system. I did hyperbaric oxygen therapy. I went to Germany for therapy. I did stem cell injection. I did everything under the sun. Everything.
It sounds like you
Everything
did
I
every medical thing.
yeah.
Okay.
Because that's what I thought. That's what I thought the answer was.
Yeah.
Never in a million years did I think that the answer was within me the whole time, or within food, right?
What I read is said that you got to 70% with these medical interventions. So, was there one of the medical interventions that stood out to you as like pushing you forward a lot?
No, because I was doing so many things, and at the same time that I didn't really know which one was the one that was helping me more.
Okay.
But it was all very slow anyway. It wasn't like, bam, I got so much better. Probably when I went to Germany for therapy, that was something that I noticed the progress relatively quickly.
What I'm understanding from that is that we do so many things in the next 7 years trying to like get our body back to where we can get it to. And eventually you get to this point of like, okay, I'm 70% recovered. So we stop throwing money and medical at it. We just say like, is there more benefit to just living life now?
Yeah, I was just tired. I was tired of always seeking health, and just not living. So I just quit. When I noticed I really wasn't getting any better anyway, that I plateaued for a while, I just stopped all that.
And now where you plateaued at and like the level that you were at, can you help us understand? Because I'm watching you standing right now and you look very mobile. So like what was different between that and what you're able to do now? Like where were you at that point in time when you said I'm done with the medical stuff?
So my voice was even sexier than today. Right?
Okay.
I call it my sexy voice, but I had no bass in my voice. I couldn't do daily activities, not daily activities, activities I enjoyed like hiking, things like that, because my balance was poor. I had very poor balance. And just, I wasn't able to run.
First of all, communicating with people is difficult if I'm not able to say things the way that I want to say them. But I mean, I'm able to make words. It's just that I don't sound like myself. Okay. But then we also have I'm walking only. And am I walking at a good pace or am I walking slowly?
Now I'm
Um,
walking pretty slow.
okay. So I'm walking slowly. I don't have good balance. So like all the activity, this happened when you were 25. What were your activities? You said hiking. What else was like the kind of stuff you used to do?
I used to run a lot. I was a runner.
Swim. Okay.
I had a pretty active social life.
All of those things curtailed. Okay. And I'm still working out. Do I keep working out?
Yeah, I still
Okay.
do that.
Okay. So I kept working out. So the working out didn't go away during that period of time. Am I on any kind of medication?
I was initially on about 30 medications per day.
Mm-hmm.
When I went home, I was taking maybe 4 medications.
Okay.
One of them an antidepressant, one of them for sleep. And then eventually, after 10 years, I think I was taking baby aspirin.
Okay. So one medication.
Yeah.
How do we end up finding that food was making a difference or could make a difference, or help us understand how we go from throwing every medical thing at this problem to saying, huh, this is what it is, to things just turning around again and turning around in a good way.
Well, I didn't think food would do that much because initially I had what's considered a healthy diet by the what we're told. We're told we're given certain nutritional guidelines, and I thought within those guidelines, I'm very healthy. I was one of these people that used to, before the stroke, used to work out and eat the things I'm told are what keeps you healthy. And during the 10 years of recovery, I also played with my diet and I went from a macrobiotic, that's what that started, and then I became a pescatarian, then a vegetarian, then a
During
vegetarian,
the recovery?
yeah. And then 15 years after the stroke, I saw an ad for a course on nutrition. And I thought, man, this sounds really interesting. And I figured, you know what? I'm going to learn something new about a topic I already like, nutrition. Never in a million years did I think anything was going to happen. After all, this was 15 years after a stroke. I had plateaued already for 5 years at least, probably more. So I didn't think anything could or would change. And then, within 6 months of the start of the program is 3 months long, but I continued living the principles I had learned. And within 6 months, I was 20% more recovered, and I finally got my life back. I finally got my life back. What I had been searching for years. And I began hiking, which I could have never done prior to the program. And just my whole life changed.
So now we need to know the secret thing you learned in that course.
Well, a lot of the secret is what you talk about. But it's a little bit less. It introduces people to a different way of eating, and it does so slowly. So I think it's very difficult for somebody who wants to heal something or wants to change their diet to just radically shift it. It's easier when you employ behavioral change dynamics and they do things slowly because your body and mind just adapts better. And I think some people are just like, you know what, that's a mountain too big for me to climb. So they don't envision that they could do it, right? So that was one of the big things, was really incremental change. Another one of the things is being ketosis, right? That's what we call spring, because we actually go through the 4 seasons, and every season is a little bit different.
Okay.
But I do have to say that now it's been something like 4 or 5 years, and now I primarily eat meat. I mean, I eat some vegetables, but I find that that's the biggest bang for my buck. I love the meat. It makes me feel satiated, and that's the easiest thing for me to make as well. But it took time to get there.
I feel like the interesting thing about what you're saying is that so you take this course, it sounds out of like a curiosity to learn more about something that you A already was interested in, but also B, I'm sure there's a part of you, especially by the time you got to being vegetarian, that was attributing a lot of the healthy eating to the health that you had gotten back. And on some level, I think it makes sense because, well, depending on what kind of vegetarian you're being, if you were eating whole foods, then chances are very good that that's what happened, is that getting all the processed garbage out of your life helped you to your, at least helped your body to start to heal. But I feel like in this course, you must have learned that there's some need for animal protein. Is that what happened? Or are you
Yeah,
still vegetarian?
no, no way.
No. Okay. Okay.
Yes, but it didn't quite happen. It happened a little bit differently. So when I was going through my process, even before the stroke, I had a healthy diet. I wasn't into all the processed junk. So the very minor changes I was seeing, I really couldn't put my finger on what it was. I mean, first I did macrobiotics, then I did pescatarian, and then I thought vegetarian, but it wasn't because my health was improving. I just thought it was the right thing to do.
But I do think that when we are trying to do the right thing, we accidentally do the right thing because we take all those stupid ultra processed foods out of our diet,
Yeah,
and then our
that's
body
true.
just like can take off. I mean, I feel like this was an ideal scenario. You restart reintroducing some of the process, some of the meat, but what is this program telling you about all the fruits and vegetables? Like, is there a conversation about that?
Yeah, the program doesn't get into carnivore, really. That's for graduates of the program who want to educate themselves further. Then we introduce just eating meat, and we call that hunter spring. But for us, that's only seasons. So we do everything seasonally. And
Mhm.
it's not corresponding to the season you live in, but you're trying to recreate African sub Saharan seasons and what they indicate to your body. So if
Mhm.
you're eating carbs and stuff like that, well, we don't talk about the junk carbs because those are not in the program, right? But this is about food freedom, really. So we don't, did we say those are not friendly to this program? We don't say allowed, not allowed. But the carbs would indicate to your body, oh, you better put on some weight because winter's coming and you might starve otherwise. So when we eat carbs and certain fruits, and you're putting on the weight. That's the message your body's getting. And then when your body goes into ketosis, that's a season for healing, deeply healing, and resetting your body.
What I find really interesting is that it's about making sure that we're treating food like food. And we're and the thing about the seasons also I find interesting because you're acknowledging that when you will eat carbohydrates, you will be storing fat. I feel like this is something that I keep trying to get people to understand that they just don't seem to want to allow their brain to look at. If I eat carbohydrates, my body puts it in storage before I end up using it later. And we want to ignore that. We want to act like our body just takes sugar in and uses it right away. And clearly, this course that you took helped you to see that it's all part of the process. It's all the natural, correct function of the body to do these different things with these different things that we eat. So that's really cool. I like that. I'm not sure in terms of what it means to be like, for example, in the spring or the fall for, well, the spring, I guess is when do we have, it would be the fall when we would harvest. So in the fall, when we are eating vegetation, I'm not sure what it would mean in this style of eating.
It does.
Am I going over? So am I doing 125 low carb? Am I up to those numbers in this program?
We don't really talk about numbers or measuring or calories or any of that stuff.
We don't
So
really
when
talk.
you're, no, when you're in the fall, it's basically whole carbs. It's not any junk carbs, really.
So theoretically, if I went through this program and I was eating like you, theoretically, if I'm a person that just hates vegetables, I could just keep eating carnivore and nobody's going to care.
Pretty much.
Oh, I love that. Okay. Because that's me. Okay. It's very interesting because I think it puts us in a position where it's not only about understanding what food does in our body, but it also can help each one of us, from what you're saying, look at what we're eating and look at the reaction our body's given and then adjust accordingly. If I eat some carbs and my body starts freaking out, maybe I'm not ready to be in that springtime scenario yet. And that's something that I feel like you're saying that's an option for me.
When we get to spring, we recommend that spring is this food. We're eliminating carbs. We want to get your body into ketosis.
Mhm.
If you want to be in hunter spring carnivore, that's perfect. And if you want to do a carnivore the whole time, that's perfect. But then you don't need the program, right?
I do think like I remember Dr. Bickman pointing out that in a well functioning body, there's always a bit of both happening. We're always doing some sugar burning and we're always doing ketone. So we are in a ketogenic state in a well functioning body. It's when we're not well functioning that we get kicked out and then we're in a bad situation with food. So I definitely like what I think you were taught, if I'm understanding it properly. And so all of this information comes at you. 6 months later, you start to be like, whoa, I see another improvement. And it starts pushing forward.
Yeah, and I started seeing improvements and I track them because that's the way you know what's happening. I'm on the 4th page today of improvements. And some of those are really big, like I can now hike, which I could not have done before this. And my voice, that was another huge one.
This is what you're talking about. So you said you're on page 4, and
Yeah.
I just find it amazing that there's all of this that has continued to change for you. I don't know if there's anything on here specifically that you want to call out to help us understand. Like, well, I guess the first one in my mind is what was the biggest, like, I am so happy to have this back.
Oh, I would say probably hiking. Seeing that my balance or my stamina was good enough that I could do that. And then the first time I went hiking, I had somebody help me, of course, but I walked and we hiked for about 4 hours. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to be dead tomorrow. I'm going to be dead. The following day, I had slight discomfort on my knees, and I could barely even tell I did anything the prior day.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that. So, again, what's it telling us? That eating appropriately helped you not only get your balance back, your stamina back, but your joints improved as well. But what's the thing that you would say on a day to day basis that you recognize it now that that was missing and I didn't even know?
There are so many.
Okay.
My voice was a really big one because I used to speak Marilyn Monroe very low, and there was no bass in my voice. And then I remember once I was in a Zoom call, and the person recorded it, and they sent it out. And when I was watching I had spoken, and I was like, "Is that me?" Because I was hearing voice, like bass, and I was like, "That does not sound like me at all." So I asked her. I said, "Do you have a super good microphone or something?" Because I didn't even recognize. And she told me what it was, and I was like, maybe it was me. So I recorded myself on live for Facebook, and I was like, "Oh my God, my voice is back!"
That's incredible. I didn't even know that. I mean, just to tell you that when you don't know something is a thing, I didn't know that we could not have bass. Like, I didn't even know that that was a thing. So that's interesting to me.
Yeah, I think what happened, and I'm not a doctor, this is just speculation. The left side of my body ended up being weaker than my right. So my feeling is that my left vocal cord was either paralyzed or semi paralyzed. And when I changed my diet, it improved.
What we need to do is give our body the materials it needs and it will do amazing things. And your story is just, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So, what were the other things?
I want to tell you a funny thing that I noticed. that you would never in a million years think is related to food. So one day, I don't know what I'm doing in the mirror, and I look and I'm like, my eyelashes, did they grow? Did my eyelashes, because I had stick straight eyelashes, and they were really short. And all of a sudden they had like a slight curve, and they were longer. And I thought to myself, and this for ladies, because I know men probably could care less, but I thought I'm hallucinating. This can't be. And then I read that somebody in my class had the same thing, and I'm like, what? I couldn't believe it.
I do find it amazing that our body is that smart. Your body's not going to put energy towards frivolous things when it has a heart or a vocal cord or something else that it needs to heal. But like, I feel like the flip side of that coin, which I think is really cool, is that if you're seeing your eyelashes are growing, that means that there's a good portion of the internal that your body's like, yeah, we can focus on this. And that's so cool.
Yeah.
Like, that's, I think, that one of the best indications that your health is actually there.
But it's a journey, right? It's not a destination. You're always
Yeah.
improving more and more. It's even now I notice things changing, and I forget what the last thing I wrote was, but it happened this year.
Yeah, let's take a look.
Okay.
Is it on that page?
Yes, it's on that page, the very last thing.
I can't read it because my screen is too small. You want to read it out?
Yeah. This morning I was in May. This morning I noticed that my teeth are not shifting as much when I don't wear my retainer for a week or more.
Wow. Again, these are things that we don't even realize that matter until we notice them. And teeth are important. Like, how are we gonna eat the food that we need to make our body strong if we don't have to? So that's a huge one.
I was going to say about teeth is if you go see African tribes, they all have big, beautiful white teeth. And the people in the Western world have all crooked teeth. And that was me when I was young. I had super crooked teeth, and my jaw was too small. They had to expand my jaw.
Okay. With all of the work that you did on the medical side to try to get yourself into good health, and then to get this, and you were saying 20% more, but the things that you're telling me that you got sound like more than 20% in my, like when you talk, like when you think about like touching that, like I feel like the things that you got in that last bit with food was the stuff that makes us able to live. Like, you were surviving with what the medical got you to, but I feel like you're back to living now. And my big question to you is, has what you've learned and what your family has seen of like what happened with you impacted the people that are close to you in terms of how they're eating and what they're doing with food?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I decided after 6 months or so to learn about this program and become a coach myself. So to date, my brother's doing he did the program and now he's living this lifestyle. My mother, I had her on carnivore for a while and her diet is much, much better. My father lives in a different country, so it's hard to.
Okay.
But they see that I'm so much better, and so they're doing the same things. They're basically, hey, if she can do all that, what can I do?
And I absolutely think that your story, I hope, is going to help people to see where the lie that we're told that, oh, that's chronic and forever, is such a lie. Your entire body was not functioning and you have brought it back. And that last bit, like I said, I think that last bit was a huge part because it's the part that helps you to be comfortable. It's the part that helps you to do your activities. It's the part that helps you to feel happy about living. Because that's what you wrote. You feel happy about living again. That's crazy to me. And all of
Yeah,
that because you changed your food.
And we never realize, like, we could tell people, and I think people have to experience it for themselves. That's one of those things that you hear, oh, well, that may be good and well for you, people think, right? But you don't know the impact that this could have unless you try it.
I can honestly tell you that that part that you just said is true because when I was living in a painful body and believing that, this is what happens, I didn't even imagine that I would be able to take up a new sport after 50 and start climbing. I didn't
Wow.
even imagine that that would be a thing. And that's what happened. Why? Because I felt that good. So I know that what you're saying is this huge reality that we need to let ourselves see.
Yeah. And it's hard to see because we're so used to barely surviving. And I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about people in general. The human population is just surviving.
But I think part of the reason that we end up just surviving goes back to what you were saying earlier. It's like you looked at your diet and you're like, my diet is pretty good. I could do better here and I could do better here. And everything that you were doing better in was taking you further and further towards harming your body because that's the story that we're told. That, and I'm sorry, but I know that vegetables are seen as food for a lot of people. But for me, I still have a hard time putting my mind around that when eating those vegetables cause my body pain. So I feel like I think more people need to understand that certain times of the year, your body can manage it. But then it's that question of manage versus thriving. What do we want our body to be doing? And I feel like you're helping us to see where animal products brought you back.
It's what Canberry says. Canberry talks about the proper human diet and that it's a spectrum from either ketosis to ketovore to carnivore, right? And everybody can be a little bit different. Maybe I don't get negative effects from eating maybe a berry or a couple of berries, and that's okay for me. But the next person does notice that it negatively affects them. So it's a spectrum.
You know what I will say though, and this is where sometimes I end up feeling like I have a hard time sometimes with the doctors that present that because yes, there's a spectrum, but then it's a spectrum of what? So if there is a proper human diet and we step outside of what the proper human diet is, we will be able to manage because that's how we've lived this many years, but it's still not the best thing for us to do kind of idea.
Yeah.
And I feel like the thing is, for example, when we think about like dogs, you know how they say dogs shouldn't have chocolate because it's really, really, really bad for them. But if my dog accidentally got a piece of chocolate and I'm like, oh, he's fine. Should I start feeding him chocolate? So, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I feel like there's a part where we as adults need to look at the story and go, my body was screaming. My body was screaming and wasn't paying enough attention. Now that I know, what am I going to do? And I think that's part of it too.
I think what you're saying, there's a lot of balance to that. And in my mind, doing carnivore for a long time, maybe 90 days or longer, that'll reset your body. And some people need to do it even longer. And but then some people can have a vegetable here and there, and it's not going to affect them negatively. I'm not saying it's not good for them, but that they're not going to notice adverse reactions from adding fruit veggies.
I for sure can see that. Yeah, that you're not going to notice the adverse reaction. I just want people to know it's there.
Yeah,
Like that's the part that I feel like when we say it's a spectrum, it kind of makes people think that taking in the toxin didn't do anything. It did something. Was my body able to correct it swiftly? We hope yes. And it's not creating a new problem. But that's the one thing that I want people to be able to, and we're all going to make our decisions, right? And that's fine because we are all allowed. So if you choose to eat some fruit in season, go for it. We're all allowed. It's just to understand when I eat fruit in season, I'm letting in high sugar levels, I'm letting in whatever toxins are in those fruits, and my body does need to manage it. So I think it's important for us also to understand that we aren't 3,000 years ago. We are actually in 2024. I have a fridge. There's always food. I don't have to worry about me not having food. So then that bulking up for winter thing, don't need to do it. And at that
That's
point, if I don't need to do it, how am I eating? So, but we all need to make our decisions.
I think that's absolutely correct. And I think I don't mind eating meat all the time because to me that's the most nourishing, the most filling, and the least prep time. So it's a win-win-win.
Yeah.
But I recognize that for some people it's harder to wrap their heads around that. And yeah, what I would say to that is it's more beneficial. Not that it's beneficial, but it's better if you're going to eat fruit or whatever it is. Eat it every day for a week, a load of it, rather than eating just a little piece every day for 5 months.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah. Right. My body's going to, and also if my body doesn't like it, I'll know that quicker, first of all. But I also will say that one of the things that I hope people get from this conversation, when we see the amazing work your body was able to do because you gave it the right food, one thing that I want everyone to get from this is, are we making the difference between, I think I'm supposed to have it because the world says that, I'm still stuck in my addiction because I haven't solved it, or I'm doing what's best for me. And there's a psychological piece under there that if we don't acknowledge it, we could be thinking that we're doing something for one reason. We could be thinking that we can't not do something only because we haven't solved the social pressure, we haven't solved the I want to feel like everybody else and all the other things that happen when we live 30, 40, 50 years eating that way. So I think that's also huge for people to take away from this conversation, because what you've accomplished is amazing.
Exactly what you said sums it up perfectly. And I think when I noticed that my body was doing all that healing, I was totally blown away because I didn't think that was possible. And I think people don't realize what's possible for them. You're not supposed to be tired every day. You're supposed to be able to do things as you get older, you know? But we don't realize that because all we see is with aging comes slowing down, decrepitude, maybe nursing home. But no, if you think about it, our great great grandparents, there were no nursing homes. They were probably working the fields or doing whatever they were doing until they dropped dead.
And I think that's part of it, is that we've been told a story that says that you're supposed to hurt as you age. And it's not reality. Well, I mean, are you going to have some hurts at some points? Yeah, like I fall sometimes while I'm climbing and doing stuff. And yeah, that hurts. But am I just hurting to hurt? Because that's what was happening to me. And it started when I was 23. Just pain for the sake of there being pain there, and I didn't do anything. That's not normal. But we think it is. And it's very sad that we think it is.
It's very sad.
And that's why people like you and I have these conversations, so that the people who are 20 and 30 and 40 can come in and say, "Oh, I could feel good." And the people that are 70 are going to look back and go, "Well, if you could do it at 50, maybe I can do it at 70." And we make some huge changes happen. That's what I want. I want to make some huge changes happen, because my goal right now is telling stories like yours so that people who have children coming up, whether it's children or grandchildren, are feeding their kids differently. That's what I really want. So that that next generation doesn't live what you and I lived.
And it's an issue because even yesterday or 2 days ago, I was talking to a gentleman and he says Well, I have high blood pressure. I kind of controlled it with diet. He's older. He's probably in his 60s, maybe 70s. And I'm telling him, you can even get better. You could probably get off all medications. And he's not. It's not landing because he tells me the story. Well, there were two brothers. One was really healthy and he was a runner and he worked out and he had a good diet, a really good diet. And then he had a brother who gambles and he drinks and he's totally unhealthy. And then the brother, the health nut, he had a heart attack. And I'm like, right, because he was not as healthy as he thought he was. He's not as healthy. Society will tell you that if you look a certain way and you do certain things, that gives you health. Not at all.
One of the things that's hard for people to understand is how protective eating meat with the accompanying fat is. And I feel like what's interesting is people will tell those kind of stories and they're like, yeah, the health nut passed away. And but what they don't realize is that, well, if he didn't care and he was drinking, he probably was eating meat with the accompanying fat and protecting himself. And that's why he's still here. Right. I feel like a lot of times we just can't put our mind around the fact that limiting our fat intake is that bad for us. Our healthy fat intake, by the way. So the animal fat, it's that bad for us. And we hear these stories over and over again and people are confused. I'm no longer confused by it.
But it's so sad to see that fat has been demonized so much that everybody's brainwashed. Even when I guide my clients in the program, they're like, they're trying to avoid fats. And I'm like, no, you want healthy fats. They're necessary.
This story of fat will make you fat was there before I was born. So it's just like, it's really hard for people to even put their mind around how long we've been told that lie, that fat will make you fat. As a matter of fact, I just put up a video not too long ago, kind of detailing that with Dr. Nobe. I hope I'm saying his name right, because he walks us through it. And it's ridiculous of when it all fell apart.
Yeah. And it'll make you fat and it'll give you heart attacks and clog your arteries. It's crazy.
And I think the other piece of the puzzle is these seed oils that lower our cholesterol. We don't even understand why they lower our cholesterol, but apparently they glycate our proteins, and that's how they end up lowering it. And it's just like, again, why would anybody want that? And we don't. But because we don't understand the process of what's happening to make it happen, we just think cholesterol lower, oh good. And not to mention the fact that we need cholesterol. It makes all of our hormones. Like there's just so
Yeah.
many reasons why we should be running away from the idea of lowering cholesterol.
I have a funny story about cholesterol.
Okay.
I go to my doctor once a year to get checkups. And the last time I went, apparently something was wrong. And they call me, and the nurse's aide says, "Oh, what is your pharmacy?" She didn't even ask me anything else. She said, "What is your pharmacy?" And I said, "Why?" "Because the doctor wants to prescribe something." And I'm like, "What?" "Oh, cholesterol medication." I was like, "I don't want it!" Because my cholesterol is 273.
Mhm.
Right? And then my triglycerides are super low. I think they were 64.
What's interesting to me is back when you were feeling horrible, your cholesterol was in the right range, right? And like, I feel like there's a complete disconnect. And I do understand that there are certain markers inside of our body that could indicate when there's a problem. So I'm not saying that we need to ignore everything because that would be a huge mistake. But a marker that doesn't point to anything, but we keep fighting to lower it, that I feel is something that modern doctors should just stop pushing this idea. But I'll tell you, I have a similar story. Pat, my spouse, when he was in the hospital and he was leaving because he had a heart scenario, they tried to give him a statin as well. And it's just like his answer was absolutely not. So I do feel like we're starting to be on it, but can you imagine all the people who don't know? Because it's a lot of us. There's
A
a
lot
lot
of
of
it.
us out there who don't know they should say no to the statin or
You know,
any other cholesterol lowering medication because they came up with a new one recently. I can't remember what it's called.
but look how brainwashed we are that even I got nervous when they told me it was that high. I didn't agree to the statin, but somewhere in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, oh, maybe it is a little high.
But you know what is interesting to me? And I feel like there's certain things that I learn that as soon as I learn it, my I get calm. When and I believe it was Dr. Barry was interviewing someone and they had a conversation and he pointed out that cholesterol is so important your body makes it and it will just make it and just keep so you're trying to lower it and it's just going to keep making it and that helped me to calm down, right? Because like and I can't stop my body from making it, so what I'm doing is fighting my body. That makes no sense. My body's right. The same way that when I learned that our body makes all the sugar that we need, it's like I don't need to eat vegetables, and right away I was calm. I can actually put them down. Thank you very much. That's what I needed to hear. And I feel like there's certain things that our biology books have been saying for years that if we would just let ourselves look at the data that's there, how much better conversations could we have with our doctor about what I'm willing to do, what I'm waiting on, and what I'm not willing to do?
Yeah, part of the issue is that doctors are trained in this system that profits off illness. So you're not gonna get straight answers when you go down the Western medicine road.
So I feel like what's interesting there is that yes, they they're in a system that profits off medicine and medications, but I don't think the individual doctor or not every individual doctor cares to benefit that way. But the problem that many of I know I faced with my doctor is that they think they know better than the person in front of them who's living the symptom. And so there were many times where I was given medication and going back in the Wayback Machine where I'm having a reaction and I say, since I started taking medication, this is happening. And I get it's impossible.
Yep.
Obviously, it's possible because that's what I'm living. And I feel like if I wasn't stubborn and hard headed, I would have kept taking the medication rather than just saying, well, I'm going to stop taking and see what happens. And the symptom went away. And I was like, I think I'm right. But not everybody's going to do that.
Right.
And not everybody's going to live the withdrawal that I lived to check if I was right.
Right, because some people think that people that are wearing white lab coats, they're God. They're gods. And so you must listen to everything they say. And that's interesting about the being stubborn, because I'm that way too. So I think certain characteristics
Yeah. Well, I
help.
mean, obviously, right? You learned about this thing and you got your megaphone out and you started screaming it to the world. It's like, come on, people, we could be feeling better. And I think is exactly what happened to me. It's like, how do we not get everybody on this plan? Like it doesn't make sense that everybody and their babies aren't on this plan. And I feel that being a little stubborn and a little hard headed and aggressive sometimes is what you need for the message to be out there. But at the same time, obviously, understanding that every single person on the planet is going to make their decision. And, one of the things that really, again, it aggravates me, I guess is the right word, is that this idea of profits is the reason that a lot of this is happening. But I know for a fact that there's no need to lie to us about what medications do. And like all the stuff that they're doing isn't necessary, but they do it anyway. not realizing that there will always be people who are willing to bet on medical. That's just the way the world is going to work. The same way that there are still people who smoke today. And there are people that started smoking today. Like, that's a real thing. Some people started smoking today when we know what cigarettes do. That tells us that there's always going to be people that are going to eat the junk food, and there's always going to be people that are going to drink, and all the things that they're so worried that if we knew the truth we wouldn't do. It's not reality, because there are people who started smoking today.
That's very true. And I think people that do things like that, they don't realize the impact that has. They must not, because if they knew, I don't know, I just think they wouldn't do it unless you lived like, but you know what it is? If you smoke a cigarette today and tomorrow, you don't feel the impact of that right away. You don't feel the impact of that until maybe 20 years later. And that's when you really,
The thing is, you don't feel the negative impact, you get the positive impact. And that's why I believe that they don't need to tell us a story. There will always be people that are going to look at the situation and go, wait, I get to keep eating garbage and just take this medication and deal with it later. There are going to be people that say yes to that.
that's crazy to me.
But then there's going to be all the other people that are like, or I could eat properly and I don't get to eat garbage anymore, but my body, and there's going to be people that say yes to that. We need to allow people the right to choose which camp they're going to be in. And it's fine. Like, honestly, it's fine. Whichever camp you choose is fine. But I do know that if that was transparent, the same way that we don't let our children go to the bar, we would be more careful of educating our kids about processed and ultra processed foods. And that's, again, out of those kids that are educated, some of them are still going to choose wrong. That's fine. Everybody has to make their decision. But I feel like it starts with, do we even have the option to make a decision? And we don't, because we're being lied to and bullied left, right, and center. Because it's bullying when my doctor doesn't believe me what's happening to my body.
Right.
It's bullying when he calls me a liar and says I'm not taking the medication that I am taking. That's bullying. And it shouldn't be happening.
I think a lot of that is due to arrogance.
Yeah. Like the doctors and nurses or whoever that didn't want to even look to see if your eyes were tracking. Like, come on. Like, that just doesn't make any sense to me. That they wouldn't even
Right.
just verify, follow this pencil and see what you did. Ask you to blink and see what you did. I don't understand. So I definitely feel, well, I know for sure there are doctors that care. And I know for sure there are doctors that are not arrogant, and nurses. We know that for sure because we've talked to some of them and they're amazing people and they get it. Was there something else that you wanted the wellness warriors to know about?
Basically, you can take your power back. You don't have to be a victim of genes. Even genes, they tell us everything is genetic. No, there are a few things that are genetic, and they're like 10%, not even, of all the millions of things they say are genetic. No, take your power back and change your life.
I love that. And I feel like, just to add on to that, the epigenetic part of the story, I feel like they kind of use epigenetics against us in this way that they say, well, you have these genes and then they magically got turned on. Everybody has these genes and they get turned on if you're in a bad situation with food and pollution and water quality and all the stuff that we live 24/7. Stress, work stress, don't know where you're going to live, and trauma, all the things can turn it on. And I feel like it's, again, going to your point, it's like if they blame it on our genes or they blame it on Violet's special situation, well, you didn't live the life that I live, so you don't have to worry about your joints. Of course you do. You have joints. If you have joints, you should be worried about them. So definitely, you're right. Our community needs to pay attention to the fact that if I'm living a problem, the food is playing a role somewhere along the line too. Like, and
Yeah,
yes, there might be stress, and yes, there might be genetics, whatever, but it's also that environment is playing a role, a huge role.
huge.
I'm so shocked to know what your beginning was, to know that this is what you like. I'm still in shock. I have to be honest with you. I'm still in shock. Like, I can't even imagine that someone doesn't know that I'm awake for more than 2 weeks. Like, first, that can't even imagine it. But then the fact that, what is it, 15 years later, that you're climbing and sorry, you're hiking and doing all these amazing things. It's just, it's inspirational from where I'm sitting. It's just, I love that we're having this conversation.
Me too.
And I thank you so much for sharing your story with my group, because I think every wellness warrior is going to hear this and be able to say, okay, how am I going to challenge myself? Because that's what this is about, right? The fact that you're standing this entire meeting, we've been talking now for an hour and 20, no, longer than that, because you were standing when we started, before we even started. So probably like an hour and 30 something minutes, right? I love that. Like, we can get our body back.
We can. And I'll even share more stories. I went hiking yesterday for like 3.5 hours. I don't even feel it today. Even though my legs were a little bit sore yesterday, just a teeny weeny bit that tells me, hey, you're actually doing something strenuous. Today I don't even feel it. And recently I drove to South Carolina. I'm in New Jersey. And I split the drive up, but I drove half the day, like 7 hours. And then I had to teach after I drove. And I was fine. Nobody said, oh, Maria, you look tired or nothing. I was perfectly fine.
One of the things that's so amazing about what you're saying is you didn't think at the beginning of this that you were going to do it. Like, you had given up that day in the room when you couldn't breathe. You were like, finally. And now here we are, fast forward to 15 years later, and it's amazing
Yeah.
what your situation, it blows my mind. Again, I'm just shocked. And
I
now you're
guess I'm
hiking and teaching, and it's amazing.
they say I'm a walking miracle, but you and I know that it's not really a miracle.
Yeah.
It's what the body does.
And this is why I get annoyed too, because if they call it a miracle, it makes people think that they couldn't do the same thing.
They can.
And the truth of the matter is, what you did was change what you were eating. What you did was back up and start listening to your body. And instead of forcing my body to do what it doesn't want, I let it do what it wanted to do by giving it the right foot. I feel like even in this moment, for them to call you a walking miracle is detracting from the truth of what happened.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think that's all part of the, shall I say the word, conspiracy.
I think we all think it, right? And but you know what the funny thing is? On some level, we can take it down from conspiracy and bring it down to like business practices, right?
Horrible business.
If it keeps my pocket going forward, why would I not do it? And I think that's the part that's so hard for people, because they don't see the connection between I ate cookies and I need a statin. But we see it. And I think is like, until it becomes more obvious, people are going to keep struggling with this idea that they should be asking more questions. They're going to struggle with the idea that it, how can I say fruits and vegetables are not healthy? Like, what's wrong with Violet? And you'd be surprised how many comments I get that I'm just crazy. Why does anybody listen to her? Like, it's crazy to me how many comments I get about the fact that I'm trying to help people see that there's a reality that there's some things that you eat that you don't need to be eating. Now, I'm not telling everybody to do that. If you want to eat them, eat them. But why are we afraid to pay attention to how we feel after we ate them?
That's part of the human condition, I think, that we do not notice consequences if they're too far away.
But what about when they're happening now? Like, there are people who are eating the foods, their weight is rising, and then they're fighting with themselves. But they keep reintroducing the food. So I'll take them out for a little while. I lose weight. Yay. And then I put them back. So, and that's not far away. That's happening on cycles every few weeks or months or however quickly you get back in and out, right? Like, there is something there that we're not letting ourselves look at. And I think it's fear based, probably.
I think there's even more to that. The diet industry in this country is worth trillions of dollars. Trillions. So it doesn't behoove the diet industry to say, hey, our diet failed you. You did not fail our diets. So everybody ends up feeling like a failure, which spirals into repeating the same behavior. And then you're just in this hamster wheel.
Okay. let's 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 go to something positive. I would love for you to tell the wellness warriors something that they can do tomorrow. Let's say if you were scared to start.
All right, I'll tell you a couple of things you can do. Something that changed my life so much is just adding more water. Something as simple as that. Drastic change in energy levels. You can also do breathing exercises, and it could be as simple as 5 breaths in or 5 seconds in, hold 5 seconds, 5 seconds out, and repeat that 5 times in a row. And do that a couple of times a day. That will shift your body. And also, one of the things, if somebody is nervous about trying this, I would say have veggies if you need them. When you're eating meat, do not eat carbs because carbs and meat together, your body needs to be very acidic to digest it, and carbs, your body needs to be alkaline. So you're actually making your digestion more difficult by eating them together. So maybe you want to have higher carb veggies on their own.
Interesting. So there are lots of things we can do to help our body. First of all, hydration is huge. And if we drink water, we're not drinking silliness like juice and soda and whatever. So like hydrating our body, breathing, so kind of slowing ourselves down, breathing, and just making sure that we focus on eating carbs separate from meat. One of the things that I've noticed about eating carbs and meat together, and this was interesting because it was so obvious to me once I put it together in my mind. Actually, it was after a conversation with Dr. Chafee that I realized how I should have noticed that. If you eat carbs and meat together, you can actually eat more too. And I found that out because I was eating a pork belly. So I had a piece of pork belly, and because I weigh everything, I knew that I had the same amount each time. But sometimes I would have it with veg. And then on the few occasions I had it without veg, I couldn't finish the same amount. Like not even half of it. But when I had it with veg, finished it. And he helped me to see that it was because I was having them together that was creating that problem. So you actually can eat more.
Think about the people that go eat out and they eat steak and potatoes and dessert and bread and
Now we know why there's always room for dessert. Yeah.
Yep.
Those are simple things for people to do. And it doesn't automatically equal I'm eating that differently. So I think that that's an amazing first step that people can take. Thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
Where can people get in touch with you? How can we have more from you? I'm not sure if you have a channel.
I do not have a channel yet.
Okay.
If you want to get in touch with me, probably the best way is on my webpage, genuinelymaria.com. I'm not that big on social media. I'm a little bit allergic to it. I will get better though. But for now, just my webpage. And if you want to have a conversation, I do free discovery sessions or free consultations.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Maria. This was a very enlightening conversation. I love the positive outcome because you look amazing. And I think you probably could hike around circles around me. So that's pretty cool. And I look forward to talking to you again in the future.
Yes, I would love that. And thank you for having me. This was awesome.
Perfect. Thank you.